When it comes to self-development, no matter the method you use, the vital point is to practice. If you're ready to transform your life and claim the potential inside of you, then you're in the right place. Welcome to The Vital Point. I'm your host, Jonathan Schechter. I am a transformation coach, breathwork facilitator, and an enthusiast of personal growth. You have the capacity to evolve and bring your intentions and dreams into the world, and there's never been more access to so many incredible modalities that can help you on your journey. This podcast will help you learn simple methods you can use to transform your life and share the stories of practitioners who are doing the work so that you can feel inspired to go and practice, because that's the vital point. My guest today is Leo Lobbestael. As a psychotherapist, meditator, rock climber, and artist for the last 12 years, his work has been in supporting individuals suffering with trauma and supporting them in the transition into the wise and intelligent nature within all of us. He's a holistic psychotherapist that uses somatic approaches like brain spotting, breath work, and meditation to support psychotherapy. And I got to tell you, as a aside, it's been a wonderful experience just in the last few minutes to reconnect with Leo. We went through our breathwork training and certification for neurodynamic breathwork together a couple of years ago, and found him and his input and wisdom very insightful. And, I'm glad that we've stayed connected in the ways that we have over the last couple of years, and that he can join the podcast today to share his perspective and his experience with you all. So Leo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. So nice to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
I'm so happy that you have created this space to bring in these different modalities and to share, with people. That I really am enjoying listening to your podcast, and the offerings are incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thanks for being here. So it's interesting. We've gone through a couple of iterations of what we wanted to talk about today. Originally we had talked about maybe doing talking about brain spotting, which I'm really curious about. And we kind of settled on, talking about empathy as well as safety, curiosity.
Yeah.
And I really loved what you said right before we hit record, which is having the tools and the methods to come back to yourself. And there's so many different directions that we could take that in.
Yeah. I've been thinking before coming on, and what to share. And one of the things that resonates with me right now in this moment is that, I had some anxiety coming in, right? Just what should I share? And there's the tradition that I want to speak from deeply, I feel like, is so much, I feel like I'm a child in that tradition. And that's a tradition that I feel like is really deep within all humans. It's something that's in nature. It's not something that I can really teach someone. It's not something that I'm an expert at, but I really have learned, and I'm still on that learning journey of finding these different tools that have been helpful to remind me that I'm already whole. I'm already okay. And I've been working with meditation, I think, primarily. More recently, I've been using breath work, and I've used different plant spirit medicine kind of approaches to finding that, kind of back into wholeness. I believe truly that we're already whole. We're already whole as humans, and what we often are doing is trying to we feel we need something more in our life. We need another relationship. We need another thing to buy, another thing. We pull that in to kind of hope that will bring us wholeness, or that thing will make me whole now. More sex, more this, more that, and now I'm going to be whole. But turns out that doesn't work. And I've been like a real slow learner at that, I think. What I found myself in the trap, and I'm not sure if you found this, Jonathan, but during COVID, there's been so many different trainings out there. Now there's this big revolution of psychedelics, right? You could call it, I guess, a revolution or evolution, but there's so much around psychedelics and different forms, different practices. Somatic experiencing, brain spotting is another one, but different tools. And what I found myself in was, oh, I need these things. I'm incompetent without these things. I'm not, and I lost sight of some sort of wholeness that I already was okay somehow. But I didn't. There's nothing wrong with these tools. I think they're excellent tools. But what I'm finding is that if you find one tool, for me, I think like meditation or something like that, you can use that tool, because it actually is, if you look at a lot of this work, like somatic work and mindfulness, is woven into all that work. It's deeply ingrained in all the somatic work. And in terms of like getting in touch with the body. So this tool, or using a tool to start waking up, so we're not always grasping things. Anyway, what's touching you about that, Jonathan? Is there any? I'm seeing you nodding. I'm just kind of
Yeah, what's coming up for me is the idea of addition versus like subtraction. Like this concept of like, well, I'm there's something wrong with me, or I'm not whole, therefore if I add something else, that will make me closer to the whole. And instead, like being able to flip that perspective and say, well, what are these methods that I can use to actually pull away the things that aren't really me? Like almost like the things that are separating me from that wholeness. It almost makes me think of music production. Like there's only so much that we can continue to add and add and add before the song becomes like this cacophonous like sort of chaos. And actually at a certain point, some of the most beautiful songs are the simplest and are like broken down to their bare essence and have the space in the rest of the mix to really shine through, because they're not covered up by like you adding and adding and adding and adding.
Yeah.
So that definitely came through.
Thank you. Because at our core, and I think what I'm trying to, again, is what I want to speak to. And again, I'm a child in that, but I feel like it's an area of growth that I want to offer the world, is this, that at our core, we are just kind of wanting connection with others. I truly believe just connection, love, compassion, kindness. And we really are, we are that at our core, but we're really being pulled to do all these things and try to fill the things to that we think those other things are going to make us happy, or those things are going to make us feel connected, but it becomes a distraction. But I've seen this as an example, and I'm not, it sort of relates to the music analogy, but I've seen it a lot with sort of new therapists in the field. And there's this, when you're taking something like a practice, like let's say brain spotting, and you aren't necessarily embodied in sort of your own work. You're just working from a philosophy, and you start kind of like, it's really rigid, and it's kind of it becomes a thing that you think the tool is doing the work, where we're the people doing the work. So if we're not doing our work in relationship to the person we're working with, it's that thing doesn't work the same way, that tool. So I guess to jump into empathy is what I'm been finding is that if we stay steady as a therapist or as a guide, in particular in non-ordinary states, because I think I'm really fascinated by that work. When you're in the non-ordinary state, working with these medicines, all these tools to help us come to the present, it's really critical as guides to stay present and not necessarily be working with all these theories. This is my experience, because you start pulling these theories in, and they can be confusing for people in that state. So if you are able to stay really present in yourself, my experience is that empathy, compassion, all those things, all the compassion, the kindness, the caring, human nature pieces that are natural parts of supporting a client, they naturally rise out of us. You don't need a theory, or any sort of thing to add to tell you how to do that. You don't need a training that speaking for myself, you don't need something else to add on top of the thing that you you already are that. So if you just connect inside and you are a guide and you are wondering what to do in this situation, it's go inside, learn how to connect within, and ground yourself, and the resources are there to respond in the appropriate way. Nothing more needs to be added.
Yeah, what you just said kind of reminds me of that spiritual ego sort of idea. Like, maybe like, okay, we've gone from saying like, oh, if only I had this new car or
Yeah,
this new computer or something, then I would be whole.
yeah,
So then we start to go through this kind of like awakening process, and it's like, oh, now I need to go get this training or that training or read this book or that book,
right.
so that I can hold space and be of service. When what I'm hearing, and I really agree with this if I'm getting you right, is that the key is really to be doing our own work and be
Yeah,
connected to that source of empathy and compassion and presence within ourselves.
yeah,
And then we don't need every single training in the book. We're just, our own light is shining through.
exactly. That's what and the reason I think I focus on empathy, at least in my experience, is I find that a lot of people in the healing professions, particular psychotherapy or psychologists, often say, something like Carl Rogers' work, or the earlier, sort of empathy is kind of like part of it, but it's not that important. It's there's other parts here. I'm a psychodynamic person, or I'm a parts person, or so they use this empathy piece as an idea that this is just a small part of the work. They use it when they need it, kind of thing. And I'm not arguing what's better. I'm interested from a less of a philosophical perspective, and then that when we connect within ourselves, I find that empathy naturally arises. We're naturally curious. We don't naturally analyze people, or we don't naturally put people into boxes. If we're really connected, we feel compassion and kindness and those deeper experiences. So I don't necessarily care about the philosophical theoretical thing. I'm kind of looking at like what actually happens for me is that the empathy naturally comes. And to me, that empathy, the more I've been thinking about empathy, is empathy. What is empathy? Empathy is like, to me, it's like, okay, it's understanding, right? I'm understanding, I'm you. I understand you. And it's Thich Nhat Hanh says empathy at its deepest root is love. And I love that. I love that because it's like, if I love you so much, I understand it's something, it goes, uh, love to me, I can't put words to it fully, but I think it's a real, um, welcoming, accepting gesture. It doesn't, it's supportive, it's non-judgmental, you know. And the other part of empathy, it's, to me, it feels like it's consent based. So if I understand you, that means I understand what your intention is in coming into therapy, for example, or coming into this journey with me. I understand you. I've taken the opportunities and the due to my efforts at my own presence to pick up on any subtle nuances that are happening in the relationship we have with each other, and check in with you. So I'm following you, and I understand that what you say, and then there's this kind of latent content of what's going on, the emotional content, and I'm working with that. So when I'm empathetic, there's this consent. There's always consent. I don't move forward until I understand that you want to move forward, because I understand that, okay, I understand you're kind of stuck right now. So I'll before we move forward, we'll ask. If I don't understand you full at any point in the process, I stop to work on that when we work from a with empathy. So that I really appreciate this consent driven approach to understanding empathy, because I'm seeing a lot of how, if we're just using a theory, how much work is actually consented to. We have consent at the beginning, but are we working with consent throughout our practice? Something I'm not sure how that does that ring through, and how does that settle with you, Jonathan, when I share those words?
What's coming up for me, first of all, thank you. That was really deep. I feel like we could unpack a lot of that. And a lot of it did resonate to me. I feel like a relative newcomer
Mm.
to a lot of the ideas that you just brought up. And it's something that I've worked with, that I've been working with my partner, really for the last year and a half or so, with not quite a couples therapist, but like somebody who we're working on authentic relating and nonviolent communication, and things that I had a lot of resistance to in the beginning, partially because I wasn't listening. And that's what I hear in what you shared, is like that a lot of it is listening and then checking in to make sure that I'm understanding you.
Yes.
By listening, by being curious, by using a technique like reflective listening to reflect back what you shared, and then saying like, hey, did I get you? Then we can move forward with that mutual understanding that I'm understanding you. I
Mm-hmm.
am like, we have that consent.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have that, if I didn't get you, then it gives you the opportunity to, to add,
Mm-hmm.
to engage in the conversation and like help me understand you even better so that we can continue to move forward. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And it was really, really frustrating to me in the beginning because one of the things that like sort of sparked the whole work with my partner was her saying repeatedly, unfortunately, um, I don't think that you listen to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think that you're a good listener.
Oh.
And um, the confusion and the frustration for me was that just about everybody else in my life had like that I cared about or that like had a big role in my life
Mm-hmm.
would compliment me on my listening skills, and tell me that they thought, wow, you're a really good listener.
Yeah.
Wow, your listening has gotten so much better in the last few years. And, like I feel so comfortable talking to you, or, it would get called out at work, or like, I've been in job roles where literally part of my role in leadership is to like do, sort of clarity checks and like check in and say like, okay, like, are we on the same page so that we can move forward and get this project done?
Mm-hmm.
And even like in my, current role that I'm in the process of leaving, a lot of my job is communicating between two different parties that don't really speak the same language, even though they're speaking English.
Okay.
The business people and the technical people, that if there's not an intermediary that speaks both their languages, like the project doesn't get done to one of their specifications.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, well, what do you mean I'm not a good listener? Like, I think I'm a great listener. And not only that, people tell me that all the time, like, what are you talking about? And so I got really defensive in the beginning, and I had a lot of resistance to starting to work with these tools and like work with someone that would help me become a better listener and
Mm-hmm.
become more present. And yet, like I was sharing with you before we hit record, like I had a conversation last night in a business context where literally I just had to sit there and listen and be curious about like what they were actually saying.
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard was unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
What I heard was, like that hurt and that sort of defensiveness.
Yes.
Um, and
And that's a deep listening you're doing there. You're listening beyond the words that people are saying.
right, yeah. And that's you know what, that's actually like a compliment now that I've gotten several times from my partner, is
Mm-hmm.
like I'll reflectively listen to her and repeat back and say, okay, so what you're saying is, and she's like, wow, you got that from what I said? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I heard. And she's like, well, I didn't say that, but that's exactly what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels great for me, because going from like, like obviously I want to be a good communicator with my partner. Obviously I want to give her what she needs so that she can be happy and fulfilled in the relationship, because that's only going to make me happy as well, right? That if we're operating on the same page and like in sync with each other. So to go from like, well, I don't think that you're a very good listener, to like, wow, you're really getting me and like getting at a deeper level,
Mm-hmm.
is like, I feel great when that happens. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm getting it. And I came off of that conversation last night in this business context fully aware. And I came out and I talked to my partner and I said, I feel really grateful that for the work that we've been doing over the last year and a half
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with these techniques, because without doing that practice, without having that practice with you,
Mm-hmm.
I would not have been able to like have that conversation. It would have gone in a completely different way, because I wouldn't have been getting consent. I wouldn't have been listening.
Mm-hmm.
My own hurt and wounds and like sensitivities would have been triggered. And instead of being able to just like hold them and like be like, okay, well, let's go deeper about what this person's actually saying,
Yeah.
like where they're coming from. rather than me getting defensive about like what it's bringing up and triggering in me, I like literally wouldn't have been able to do it. It would have gone totally differently, and I probably would have blown up this business deal. And so I felt, grateful of like, oh wow, this is what an amazing process, because I literally remember going into the first session with this counselor, whatever you want to call him, and he said, so what do you guys want to accomplish? And my partner, she says, well, I want to work on being a better, I want better communication and better listening. And he said, well, what do you want to get out of it? And I said, I'm here for her. Like, I'm really, really skeptical about all this, but I recognize that it's important to her. So I'm going to give it a shot.
Right.
But like, I was kind of sitting back, like, like I'm here, but I'm not like fully in, and, I don't know how this is going to go. And, so huge shift. And for me, like, I've seen the benefits of it, and now like it's integrating into my life. So like, that's where that shift continues to happen.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for sharing that, this relationship and the work challenges and just some real human experiences there that you're sharing around challenges with communication and empathy. Really appreciate that. And growth, not only challenges, but the growth of it. It sounds like you're on a real growth curve to be someone that shows up in a relationship with the kind of support. And I think the empathy is just I think it reflects we're all in these relationships somehow to wake each other up. So if we can offer some understanding of the other person really deeply, it's so helpful. It's so supportive. Some of the things that you shared, I just wrote them down here, and I just wanted to bounce off you again, because there's some further things I wanted to look at. Do you mind, Jonathan?
Yeah. So, sounds good.
The first part of it was I love that, you were talking about going to this therapist person, and they were talking, and you've been learning these kind of like reflective listening techniques. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. So these are tools people learn, and I think they're great. But I think that what I'm speaking to is an empathy that when we learn a tool, it's kind of like a theory. And I'm thinking that they can support us because they can connect with, but I think there's another way of accessing that too, where instead of using a tool to say, okay, now kind of parrot back what they said, or try to hear them. When we connect inside ourselves, when we feel grounded, and there's some space inside of us that it comes from a belief and a trust that we're all somehow similar in this way, that we naturally are curious, and we naturally are really interested in connecting with people. Naturally, is no technique. It's just like, wait, I don't understand. It's just pure curiosity. It's pure love. It's pure. It's just a desire to understand and connect and be involved in someone's life. You know what I mean? So that's the interesting thing that I think is that I'm trying to speak to again, is like this idea of like technique is what often therapists will teach, like an idea of like, okay, you do that and it helps. But also under that is this idea of like connecting inside ourselves to find that authentic way of just actually like wanting to connect with them and be with them and understand them. And then the other thing is I wanted to speak to is like empathy, I think is really interesting in terms of like, because people, you got to get it right. Like, okay, we can kind of put ourselves on like, I'm going to parrot this back, and I hope I get this right. Did they say it? It can be a bit hard on ourselves. And I heard it said once, and I really like this, that empathy is really just a kind of like a hypothesis. And so you kind of, a hypothesis about sort of the you can call it the latent and the manifest. So that the latent is kind of the world that's going on, that's kind of the emotional world and the generational trauma world and the cosmic world, whatever is working there, all of the things, the somatic world. And the manifest is like the thing you see on the surface. Why aren't the dishes done?
Mm-hmm.
And we're mostly responding in relationship to the manifest. Someone says, "Why aren't the dishes done?" We say, "Oh, what do you mean? Why aren't the dishes done? I'm always doing the dishes." And that's the level of communication we stay at. And the empathy is a response to, there's this world of somatic work, there's this world of cosmic world thing, whatever. We're just kind of like looking at the whole picture, and then you respond to it at a bigger, more wise level, using what, like in the Buddhist writings, wise speech or right speech. So it's kind of speaking at a wiser level of communication with the people about, like, in a compassionate way that's connected, in trying to be grounded if you can, and sharing, okay, like, you're angry, my dear, you're angry, there's anger, with curiosity. And I guess that's one. And they have the opportunity, if you're wrong with the hypothesis, they have the opportunity to say, no, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. Okay, you're frustrated. Okay, yes, you're frustrated. And so you correct it according to their conversational needs, right? You're frustrated.
Yeah.
And it's a back and forth until you figure it out, what's going on there. And you're kind of consenting on the way. You're saying, yes, you're right. Okay, that's right. I get you now. It's frustration. Well, not really frustration. It's kind of like, maybe I am a little bit angry, okay? And okay, it's just a little bit, but not fully angry. Okay, I get you now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And so that's kind of the thing. And what I wanted to speak to with that is that my experience is that as you are with people in that way, first with yourself in that way, like, people talk about being, I think, client centered. I like this idea of being self centered. Just be with yourself in terms of take care of yourself, be aligned as much as you can, be grounded, be present. And then that somatic work that we talk about, like, that's really big right now too, is really gonna, if you're aware of your partner or your friends or your people, like, they start noticing their body naturally. You start noticing their body. They start interacting somatically with themselves if you're really truly trying to understand this person. It doesn't have to be a technique, you know what I mean? It naturally
Yeah.
interacts with the body.
Yeah.
So that's just a kind of a thing, that it's a natural process that comes from really being in connection.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Thank you for that reflection.
Just a thought.
Yeah. What's coming up for me is like the first thing that you said in terms of like, going beyond using a tool. Um, well, actually, I feel like the two things that you brought up are kind of interrelated in my experience.
Mm,
Like, I needed to be able to use a tool and like be the parrot
yeah.
in the beginning
Right.
before I really like got to that lower layer.
Mm-hmm.
And getting to that lower layer was not only a combination of doing the practice of using the tool, but of also like doing my own work
Mm-hmm.
and being more present and getting to a place where I wasn't so defensive and I could just listen and like be like, hey, this person just to take it back to like the sort of Buddhist framework.
Mm-hmm.
This person wants to be happy just like I do,
Mm-hmm.
and they have suffering in their life
Mm-hmm.
just like I do.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I set my defensiveness and my ego and my shit
Mm-hmm.
to the side
Mm-hmm.
and just authentically be there to listen
Mm-hmm.
to what they're saying, so that I'm not hearing, like, I think your example of using the dishes is perfect in my life, because I have a huge issue with the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've been able to figure out, like, through that inquiry and self-compassion to myself, is like, oh, well, it wasn't safe when I was a kid to like have dishes in the sink.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, when there are dishes in the sink now, there's this protector part
Mm-hmm.
that like comes out and gets really, really like upset and really defensive, for me, of like, hey, there's something that's not safe here. So like we need to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
And so like um a lot of this inquiry and going deeper to me has been involved in, or like interrelated with, parts work.
Mm-hmm.
And like, instead of seeing myself as Jonathan,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
seeing, like, breaking it down, going a level deeper and saying, well, okay, this concept of Jonathan actually has all these different parts
Mm-hmm.
within it, and they all have different needs and different places and different wounds that they're at. And let me start to like talk to them and care for them and have empathy for them and curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And like, sometimes that means like naming them,
Mm-hmm.
like that part that the part that gets upset with the dishes
Mm-hmm.
has a name, and like that's actually helped me to separate that part of myself from myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can have compassion for that part. I can
Yeah.
have that compassion for Roberta,
Yeah.
and say like, oh, okay, Roberta's getting upset right now because the dishes aren't done.
Is that
And like, I
compassionate
can
name?
comfort. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And I can have some care and some compassion and listen
Mm-hmm.
to like what Roberta needs, and like tell her, hey, like, it's okay. Like, we're this, and just doing that like takes away the edge of it, because I'm like, oh, my partner didn't leave the dishes on in the sink on purpose or to like hurt me.
Right.
She just had a different experience growing up. Like, she doesn't have this defensive response to the outside stimulus.
Right.
So again, just getting a level deeper,
Yep.
um and being able to like communicate on that level, to be able to say like, look, Roberta gets really upset and this is my preference for the situation, so how could we work together to like make this happen,
Mm-hmm.
so that like both of these parts feel better, um
What's your what have you come to do that? How do you come to,
hmm.
what have you done to find common ground or some space or
I think for me, a lot of the time it's just voicing it
okay.
and not keeping it inside. And like, I feel like a lot of my frustrations or communication issues in my relationship has been the times where like I really want to say something,
Mm.
but it doesn't feel safe
Mm. Mm-hmm.
to communicate it. So like, I'm tamping it down inside, and then I'm like, I have all this energy inside that's just kind of like churning, and it has to come out some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to like come out sideways in like a way that's not helpful or present or compassionate at all.
Mm-hmm.
um so sometimes it's just voicing it and just saying like, hey, is it okay to talk about something? And so that brings up another tool that I've had to use to get to a place of more authentic relating, the opt-in. And I really, again, another thing that I couldn't stand in the beginning of doing this work, of like, well, if we love each other and like we're in this relationship, how come we can't just talk about things? Like, why do I need to ask you, is it okay to talk about this right now?
Mm-hmm.
And is it okay to talk about this specific thing right now?
Right.
And it's really, really helped, but it's been a journey and a exploration of like learning to use that tool and being able to fully understand when the other person says no, could we talk about this later,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know, and not getting my feelings hurt over that, not having a part that's like, oh, you don't want to listen to me, you don't care about what I have to say and
Yeah.
my feelings and my needs. um so again, it's sort of like a fake it till you make it kind of
Yeah.
thing.
You're kind of saying, you were originally saying about like how it helped you to learn the technique, and yeah,
Mm,
I see what yeah, and in no way I don't want to come across, and especially here live, that this is kind of like these techniques are pointless, or they're not. There's so many methods, and that are great methods that are helping people, and
yeah.
all these different somatic approaches are beneficial. My, I guess my thing is really just like in that journey to use those different tools. Also, like it's helpful to do your own work. Do your own work.
Right, right.
Really do your own work to really connect within to do it. And I love, because as you go along that journey, and I'm also just a child in my own journey, I feel like all the time, but I find that it's like
Mm,
I really like what Ramdas said. He says it says something about there's nowhere to stand, and that resonates with me. This idea that there's nowhere to stand, and when you try it, we try to. I'm not 100% sure what he meant by that in particular, but from what I get from it, it's like this. At least how I connect with it, it's like, you try to identify in one way with something, like I am an IFS therapist, I am a brain spotting therapist, I am a this thing, I am a that thing, I'm a breath worker, and
yeah.
somehow it always feels fake to me. In the end, it feels like I'm always creating some kind of fake front, and and that's why at the beginning is like there's the tradition of nature that is existing inside of us, this intelligence, this wisdom that we are only somehow like touching a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
And neuroscience is getting in touch with it a little, starting to like see things about it, but just honoring some kind of relationship in some way, and whatever you do in that work for yourself, connecting within will help you in your relationships with clients, holding space for people, interacting with your friends and intimate partners. It's so valuable to just be in connection with yourself. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm.
So what's alive for you in terms of your journey right now and to help you
Oh.
connect with that nature? Because I want to say, like, I feel like it's a journey, right? Like
Mhm.
the things that might help you at one point in your journey don't necessarily resonate like maybe a year down the road based on the what you've discovered and connected to.
Yeah,
Like I feel like we go through seasons
yeah.
of like what connects. And I also really want to agree with something that you said a while ago,
Mm.
which is the mindfulness and somatic work interweaved through
Mm.
many, if not all, of these different practices. I can really relate to that.
So that's where's my work right now, I guess, is that what I've noticed in the different, and I've tried a fair bit of different practices, and trained in a fair different approaches. And what I've noticed is that when you really go into them, what comes is this awareness of the body, and this really deep kind of awareness, somatic awareness, and interactions with emotions that come from that, and breath. And my work the last 13 years I've been doing Vipassana practice. So I do it with the teacher Goenka. And I started a training now with Jack Cornfield and Tara Brock, which I really am liking. But they the Vipassana practice is so that has really been a real part of my journey to like make space in my life, in my mind, where I start like think I need all these things and pull them all in, and then it sort of like opens everything up, and you really get an opportunity to connect with this natural rhythm that's already there. That's been a big part of the last 12 years, 13 years. I've been really working with that. Recently, I started jujitsu, which is, it's come up in a journey, like a spirit medicine journey with mushrooms. And I noticed how much like this fear, there's like a real, like almost like a childlike fear of being hurt by someone, and no one's hurting me. I'm feeling safe. It's kind of a real typical trauma response when the nervous system feels not safe and in a safe environment. That's kind of classic trauma response. I'm unsafe, but the environment around you is safe. And that's kind of like, so I've been working with jujitsu instructor here in Montreal. That's kind of, it's really interesting how I feel like I'm taking care of and using the parts language, like that part that is young and was bullied, like there's those kind of things that maybe couldn't defend myself at one point in my life in a way that I would have liked to be. So building that on one level of reality is taking care of something else also. I'm feeling more confident in it at some level. Like it's weird to have this idea that, I'm not walking around scared every day for my life, but that's the incredible, these tools again that sort of wake us up. When we wake up and realize our wholeness a little bit, we start seeing these, that thing that's going on is not really comfortable. So in this non-ordinary state of mushrooms, realizing this small child bullied kid who I was part there, it's sort of something that needs some integration to kind of support that child, to kind of, like you're talking about, how do you take care of it now? So this is part of me like trying to like train myself to feel more confident in that way, even though on the outer shell I've been like, oh, nothing's wrong here, but then when you go in, you're like, oh, maybe not so much. So that's been my one edge I've been working in. Meditation and jujitsu and yoga, but relationship. I think relationship is a big part of my journey right now too. Just being with my partner now and having a child. Let me tell you, Jonathan, if you have a child and a long-term intimate relationship, children are masters of just awakening. They teach you so much, and it's so amazing, and so it can be so challenging, but learning to see your children as masters, real serious masters, is one thing for me, is like trying to reflect on them as like, no, they're a freaking master, man. I'm just I don't even understand their lessons most of the time, but it's just kind of like trying to step back from it, and they just want to play, and you want to get to work on time, right? You don't want to wrestle with them for 30 minutes, putting them in the car seat.
Right. Yeah, I remember when we were going through our training together and you had your daughter during the training,
Yeah.
and it seemed like a really heart-opening, expansive experience that you were just beginning.
Yeah. It's Jonathan, having a child has really, it's really the medicine, it's really like well, it's like a part of your heart is outside of you the whole time, right? That's one way of looking at it. Your part of your heart is sort of just always outside the world. You love your partner, but your child, like, she's my true love. I love my partner, but my child is my love of my life. You know, yeah.
What a beautiful thought. What a beautiful thing to say. I don't have children myself, but my dad talks about this a lot, and definitely did at earlier times in my life, of like that our children are born, you put it as masters, that they
Yeah,
come into the world
yeah,
knowing everything, like having all the wisdom and the understanding from their previous
yeah,
incarnations,
yeah.
and then slowly as they grow up sort of losing it because of the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that metaphor, especially like in relation to how we opened our discussion, in terms of like, it's not a process of becoming something,
Mm-hmm.
it's more a process of like removing the things that aren't us, so that we can get back to this connection with our like true authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, it's almost like the baby is born totally complete, and then these things happen to them because of our human experience.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we get the armor, and get these different parts that sort of disconnect us from being that true connection with our true nature and ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
then as we get older, we start to use these practices to reconnect and pull that armor off and set it down, because it's no longer needed anymore.
Mm.
We realize like, hey, I don't have to wear this, I don't have to carry this around. And
Yeah.
we're slowly coming back to our true selves.
So totally. Yeah. I don't know what to say
And I
more
think it's
about
just
it.
beautiful, like I think it's beautiful, like, I mean, I can hear and see the love and care and compassion that you have, for your daughter,
Thank you.
just through what you're sharing. And
What the interesting part of it is that it's like, maybe I can share one last thing. Recently, I was meditating. I usually meditate next to my daughter's bed before, like, after she lays down and falls asleep. I kind of meditate with her for a few minutes or so. And as I was meditating with her, as she was sleeping there, it dawned on me the sacredness of that relationship, just how important and how sacred this relationship we have with my child. And then in that was the sacredness with my partner, how that is such a, how much my partner, the sacrifices she makes to create, to be in relationship with me, and to see me the way I am, over half the time, more than easily over half the time, and the way and what I'm doing to see her, right, and how to create this kind of relationship to support a child is so sacred. And the child is like a small plant trying to grow, trying to put roots in the ground, and you're trying to create some soil, that they can grow and be like a beautiful human being. And it's so, if you want to, I just was like, found myself in in tears, kind of like, just kind of like thinking about how much work it takes, but how beautiful and how much they give back. The child is like breaking you in the good way, right? Like they're just trying to like take you apart in some ways so you aren't this kind of you're not acting. They don't allow you to act at all. There's no act. You know, they just don't want you to act, and it's just they just look at you like her name. My daughter just kind of Sky. She looks at me when I sometimes do like a fake laugh, and she just like looks at me now. She's like, no, no, Papa, no, like no laugh, no laughing, like just like like she's already like, no, 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 we don't laugh like a fake laugh. We laugh like a real laugh. And what is that? You gotta. So it's, I don't know. The sacredness of relationship, and I think is, I guess it comes down to the work we do in these spaces, these, it's the intimacy of partnership with child, with when you're in a working with medicine, the sacredness of that work, uh, the sacredness of all these different spaces, and how do we protect those spaces and that to keep them sacred is because the tradition, again, I think it's not about us. It's not about us showing up to act and say present something that's important to our children, to our therapy clients. It's just like, okay, like go in and like stop acting and get alive in yourself and be a human being and really be present with what's going on, and it'll be a real experience. You're not going to be an expert at it. It'll be broken in its own way. And
that's okay.
yeah, that's okay.
That's authentic, right? Like it's not perfect. Sometimes it's messy,
Yeah.
and and we're learning, and
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
We're doing the best we can with what we know. It's just yeah.
Yeah, and if I show up and I am authentic and present and I do the best I can, even if it falls short, then I'm okay with it. Like I don't beat myself up for that. I would say I beat myself up more for the times that I know that I'm not showing up in that way. Like where inside I know like, oh, okay, there was something ulterior there, or like I really wasn't listening, or I had something else on my mind. But if I can show up in full presence, and even if I'm not perfect, it's okay, because like I did really do the best that I could. And thank you to whoever's there to reflect that back to me so that I can do a better job next time, so that I can learn and continue to grow and like figure this out. And so like that's what a lot of what we've been talking about during this conversation is. It's just like, oh, I'm so upset that like I'm not getting this need met, or that I'm not listening good according to you. Okay, well, if I show up and I'm like authentic and I can actually do the best that I can, and you say like, hey, you know what, you didn't really get me, then I can be like, oh, okay, well, like tell me more, like I'm curious, like I want to know, not like, well, how come this is, no, like I'm defensive now because you're telling me that I'm doing something wrong.
The thing where I think it works in 99% of cases, what you're saying, I think, except for the one part that I think that kind of like because there's, especially in the non-ordinary state, there's people that may feel that they are doing something that's appropriate, but then we are having people be hurt in the non-ordinary states. There's people getting, there's violence happening towards people in these states. So, and if they, we can't be truly present with ourselves if that is happening. In my belief, if we're actually present, we can't really. Violence won't be. There's not going to be violence toward others. It's not a natural. It's not a natural instinct. So something has to, I feel like, happen at the training level to help people at least make sure that they have enough self-awareness, even if they have these trainings, that they're not going to, that they're connected enough to, that this doesn't happen. It's really it's problematic.
Well, like you said, it's about doing our own work,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, we're checking in on
And
that, making sure. Yeah.
And if the purpose of, or one of the purposes and outcomes of, doing these practices is connecting us back to that true nature,
Mm-hmm.
that real self.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to assume, which is all sometimes problematic, but I'm going to assume that both of us
Mm-hmm.
would refer to that self as our Buddha nature.
Mm-hmm.
But you could call it something else. But um, you know that is not, that part of us is not outside of ourself, it's within.
Yeah.
And so when we're coming from that place, we're not capable of violence,
Yeah.
just like you said.
Yeah.
We're capable of love
Mm-hmm.
and compassion and care
Mm-hmm.
and every other wonderful, like, higher quality that we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to connect with, you
Mm-hmm.
know so yeah, it's just about doing our own work to connect back to that place as much
Yes.
as we can. Yeah.
Hmm.
Love it. Did I get you there?
Yeah, no, I'm just kind of thinking here and just kind of like feeling into what we've shared. It's been great talking with you, Jonathan. I'm just kind of thinking like, get into these conversations, get excited, and start talking about this. And the other part of it is like with empathy, I think with that hypothesis is, I think, humility, staying humble and staying like, not humble from a place of like, um, I think there's a religious kind of like humbleness that can be like shame, and you're bad if you're not humble. Like there's that tradition, but I think humility in terms of like, we don't necessarily know always what's going on, and we have no idea necessarily what's going on with people and why they're showing up the way they are and what they're saying exactly, and how we communicate that it means something. And we think we know something about the body now, but we don't necessarily know anything about the body really at a larger level. And humility in
Yeah.
that also, for what I'm sharing right now, is like, I feel like I talked a lot, and and just kind of saying like, I again, it's just like, it's just my learning. I want to represent one of the things is, I want to represent a tradition in my growth that is farther than, it's so much deeper and wider of a river than I am, just as a personal being. And I hope I've carried that forward in some small way today, but I know I'm just a child on that. So I'm
Beautiful
recognizing where I
thought.
stand in that water.
Hmm. I love that. Um, what it what's coming up for me in this moment is the beginner's mind,
Mm,
like coming back to that childlike wonder of, like,
mm,
experiencing something for the first time.
mm,
To me, that's also a form of humility, like not assuming that I know what's happening,
mhm,
just trying to have that presence and that space, Um, and I just also really want to pause and take in what you just said, in terms of like connecting to a lineage and a tradition that is deeper than where you're at the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's just such a beautiful, beautiful thought and metaphor. And um, I can certainly relate to that in the context of medicine journeys,
Mm-hmm.
like of like feeling like I'm connecting to something that's more wise or more like evolved than my regular self. And then what can I take away from that, and how can I live and be embodied so that I can connect with that more often, so that
Mm.
I can bring that into my life more
Yeah.
and more,
Yeah.
and try to integrate it.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you. That's the goal, is that it's building a relationship with that thing that's, yeah, slow building of this relationship over time, and finding ways to connect with that relationship, that thing that's important to us. Um, Recently, I think I was telling you about this, Jonathan. I reached out to you for a bit of support afterwards, but I got a bit. There's these 10-day meditation sits that I do annually in Vipassana, and I'm a pretty good meditator. I'm gonna do I'm gonna do 20 days, and I thought I was like, I'm ready for it, and I went into that, and I'm not 100% exactly sure. I think it had something to do with using other medicines throughout the year prior. But I went in, and it was so, you know, 20 days of silence, of, 12 hours of sitting meditation a day. And I wasn't able to complete the course. I wasn't, coming, I had to leave it. And that's something when you do retreats, longer retreats, it's kind of like doesn't happen that often. It's just humble humility, realizing like, okay, like, where are you on that, and step it back. Like, it was exactly what I needed to kind of, my ego is like, meditator, come back
Right.
down, like, just take it easy, and learn some things that like, go for a walk in nature, do things that are help you build that relationship with that thing. But you don't always have to go like, because you're I have the tendency sometimes, if you go in like that, there's this resistance and you can't always get in there. So you kind of have to build a whole kind of ecosystem of different tools that kind of help you go into it, and
Yeah.
access that somehow.
There's a there's this metaphor that I've connected with like ever since I started practicing Buddhism, and I can definitely relate to that. Like, I'm a meditator, I'm a Buddhist, like I've been doing this for how many years now, and then being humbled as well. But like this metaphor that I had right in the beginning of my practice, and it comes up from time to time, and I was like really delighted that what you just shared brought it up. But like the visual of a record,
Mm-hmm.
like on a turntable, and when you put the needle down on the record and it starts to play, it doesn't really look like the needle is moving,
Mm.
at least not inwards towards the end of the record.
Right.
Like, you almost have to speed it up to like see the time lapse of like how much is actually happening.
Yeah.
But like each revolution, you're moving, you're getting closer, but like we don't see each individual revolution.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so there's almost like this gentleness, I think, that we have to have with ourselves
Mm.
for like the progress that we're making through meditation and through our practice of like, if I take that metaphor of the record and I impose onto it the lifetimes, the millennia that like I've been here accumulating shit and like not, moving towards Buddhahood or however you want to call it, then even going a few revolutions around, even if it doesn't seem like I've gone anywhere, is a huge accomplishment. It's just we can't see the scale, I think sometimes to like really recognize like the magnitude of what we're doing. I had this experience earlier. I was looking at this picture of the Crab Nebula that this astronomer has been taking once a year since 2008.
Okay.
And when you look at it, it looks like this nebula is like, has moved like maybe a half an inch, right? But then you look at the data and you say, okay, this nebula is 5 light years across. And like, besides for the sun, the closest star to us is 4.2 light years away. So even that like little minuscule half an inch is like, my head can't even really comprehend like the magnitude of it. And, sometimes I think that like I sort of apply that to our practice.
Beautiful. I love that in terms of like transformation and how
Yeah.
It's a nice, I think it's a nice thing to reflect on in terms of just like, yeah. Well, even one part of it to me is like the small step is part of the big step, like even if you flip it and you're trying to always look for, I feel like part of the human condition is that we're always looking for the big thing, the big step. And it's really part of a lot of, in particular, when we're working with addiction, I find people that struggle with addiction in their life, it's like, it's hard to experience the body in a subtle way often. And there's a hard to, you want transformation really quick. You want a thing that happens right now, and a big thing. Yeah. So it's got to be big and it's got to happen now. And we're all like that at some level, but there's people on the spectrum, I find, that's further that way. But it's like I feel like that's a little bit like that. It's like our mind is like, just be a big thing. Like it's
right.
Many years now. Like, how come the star should be way over here then? So it's like we're just conditioned this way to like want things and dissatisfied and like, okay, it is a lot actually. There's a lot going on here. Even we're not recognizing it right now. Let's just connect and see if we can recognize something. Oh, it's thousands of miles.
Right. Yeah. It's a really interesting paradox of life, right? Like there's this wonderful metaphor within Buddhism about like a room could be dark for 10,000 years and the light of a single candle extinguishes that.
Right.
In one moment, that 10,000 years of darkness is gone.
Yeah.
But like, not everything in life is like that, right? Like, and I feel like like what you're saying is, yeah, we do want that. Like, we're like, hey, I've been doing this stuff. How come it's not working? Or how come it's not working on my timetable or as quickly as I want it to be? And I think for me, sometimes that comes down to like having some compassion for myself and being like, wow, I spent a long time like tamping these emotions down or like running from them or like, trying to get away from feeling them. And so can I have some compassion and some grace for myself if like this one journey didn't like fix everything, or like this one meditation sit didn't fix everything? Like, can I have the grace and compassion to say like, okay, I am doing the best I can, and even that little bit is helping, and I'm okay in this moment.
That reminds me of
Because at the end of the day,
yeah,
right, like, we're not going to have any place to stand,
yeah.
like you were saying,
And
like,
the reason why I like that, again, that there's nowhere to stand, is that I feel like that part of it is that the condition is not personal. The condition we're experiencing is an impersonal experience, and we're looking for big healing. We want to come out of this experience because I am suffering. I am an I, and I am a thing that really is struggling. And
yeah,
there's a philosophy that we're kind of like the Buddhist philosophy there, but again, as you, I think, do work and you do your own work, you see that stuff is not just philosophy, it's reality. And it's
yeah,
like we want this thing, and we're on one level, this outside level, we're chasing things, we're trying to fill them into our life, put these things, we want big change, and then we are dissatisfied when that's not happening. But it's not a personal experience. So what is manifesting isn't, it's nothing there. It's not something you can necessarily heal, in a sense. So it's really trying to work with reality as it is rather than what we want it to be, which
right,
hard experience, hard to
yeah,
do.
yeah, because we built our entire identity around those, what we think that it is,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know what's come up a few times in my mind through different parts of this conversation is The Alchemist, the book The Alchemist, where
Mm,
it's like the treasure that he was seeking was literally right underneath him,
mm,
like it was under his pillow the whole time,
yep,
but he had to go through the whole journey that took him all over the world and through all these different experiences to bring him back to like where the treasure actually was.
right.
It's a wonderful metaphor
I love The
for
Alchemist.
what we're talking about.
Good
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
Oh, so great to talk
Uh,
with you, Jonathan. And this, I, I hope that your listeners have received something and find this supportive. It's an honor to sit with you and chat about these things.
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
I'm in the
Really
process,
appreciate
actually,
it.
myself, of like a bit, at least for the next few years, I'm shutting down the psychotherapy part of my practice. I'm going to be focusing more on really leaning into this thing I talked about, but about this lineage and this idea that there's something deeper that in nature, within us, human nature and human, that's not psychotherapy. That's that we can access that. So it's more about teaching, kind of teaching tools, and meditation and breath work will be part of that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and it's part. I think psychotherapy is great. Honestly, I just personally, I think it's more of like, we need a break. This relationship needs a break for a little while.
Hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. And, you kind of brought up one of the two questions that I like to use to sort of wrap up the episodes, and one of them is like, if people want to get a hold of you to work with you or to learn more about you, where should they go? So,
Yeah,
um,
you can still go to my website, which is it's toquestion.ca. So toquestion.ca.
what a what a cool website name. And then I guess the last, well, usually I ask this question first and then do how to get a hold of you, but I like that we've been unconventional in that method. But the name of this podcast is The Vital Point, because for me, like the vital point is to practice. I heard it this weekend in this wonderful training that I was in, that I was like, oh, I'm gonna save this and put it in my pocket and feed it. Words don't cook rice. Uh, so the vital point is to practice. But what would you say is alive for you in this moment as the vital point? What's one takeaway that people should have, or that, if people are working with you, that you'd like them to know?
I think just like, take it easy. Take it easy, guys.
Mm.
Take it easy. It's just
Beautifully
like
said.
I think it's, if there's anything, I really think it comes in many ways. It's just like take it easy, and we're always, whether it's on a deeper level of meditation, we're trying hard. I don't know, like I'm gonna get this right now. I'm gonna God. I'm just, you find you're meditating, like just take it easy, and don't worry. It's not a, like, maybe because it's not personal, and it's there's something at work greater than you. Try to relax a little bit and do something you enjoy, and hopefully you can do that with a little ease, because it's really not it's not an easy existence if we're really trying to figure it out, and be the sort of individualized, compartmentalized self. Makes it really hard. Take it easy.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, for you in the audience, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I've had having it. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a follow, leave us a review, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching it that way. And, I hope conversation inspired you to, to look a little bit deeper, to connect, like we've been talking about, with that inner nature that, working with psychedelics and plant medicines and breath work and meditation is so helpful in doing, helping us connect to that authentic, true place within us.
Mm.
And so I hope this conversation inspired you um, to connect, to take a few moments to pause, and, like Leo said, to just take it easy.
Mm.
Just take a deep breath in and out, and just, it's right there.
Mm.
It's literally right there.
Mm.
So until next time, my friends, that's the vital point. Take care, and we'll see you soon.